also write about, not just in here, but in other places, about family worship.
Uh-huh.
Just want to talk about that for a moment. Why is family worship so important?
Yeah, that's actually my latest new book. In
Oh,
last year, did a revision of a book called 10 Questions to Diagnose Your Spiritual Health. But in 2019, came out with a very small book again on family worship, which I did not experience. But again, the first person I ever heard refer to that was T.W. Hunt. Back to him again. Who, growing up in this little town in Northeast Arkansas, said they had that, and what he called a family altar. He said they established that at the beginning of their marriage. I never heard of it, though I grew up in a conservative Bible preaching church. I never really came across the idea of family worship until after seminary and reading a lot of Puritan writers and their ilk. And I began to see it more and more often. And so I began to study that and began to see that actually the church for 2,000 years throughout the world understood the Bible to teach family worship. And we're back to the idea that all Reformation begins with teaching. You can't expect people to do what they've never been taught to do. And if no one's ever heard of family worship, they're not going to practice it, So I forget exactly where I was going with your question there, but yeah, that's family worship stands between private worship and congregational worship. Again, the Westminster Confession, the Second London Confession of the Baptists, the 1689, both of them use the very same language here, that God is to be worshiped everywhere daily, in private and in families. And of course, they've already done a whole section on congregational worship. So, man, it's just amazing the blind spot that we have had on that today. We think, we stand at the pinnacle of 2,100 years of the church. We're kind of the best there's ever been. We have the collected wisdom of the church for 2,100 years. We stand on the shoulders of giants, but boy, we have missed it there. The tendency is to think with family worship, well, is this some new evangelical trend? No, it's just a blind spot, because for 2,000 years, the church universally has understood the Bible to teach this. We're the ones who have overlooked it. And where's that come? That comes back to the pulpit. You can't expect people to do what they've not been taught or heard. And if it's not been modeled, it's hard to preach on it with any conviction when you don't do it. How can you stand up and be an advocate for something you don't do? And so the problems tend to come back to the pulpit in things like this. And so it's not been taught, therefore people haven't done it. I'll give you a fact on this that's in my book. A few years ago, I had a class with 115 students. Now, these students came to Southern Seminary because they wanted a conservative, Bible-believing theological education, which means most of them came from homes and churches that were conservative and Bible-believing. And so I asked them, how many of you grew up in a home where family worship is practiced? 7 of 115 raised their hands. I said, okay, of the 108 of you who did not raise your hands, how many of you ever visited in a home where you've seen family worship? 0 raised their hands. So Travis, what's the likelihood that those 108 students who've never even seen family worship before are going to go out after graduation, and in their churches, they're going to teach the men to lead family worship? Very unlikely. So again, back to the importance of teaching, training them in the seminary, but also for pastors to train the men of their churches to how to lead family worship.
And what's the name of that book?
Family Worship.
Family Worship.
Yeah, the subtitle is in the Bible, in history, and in your home, how to do it. So just call Family Worship by a Crossway.